fights with passion, and he inspires.
Are you ready for a war?
All right, welcome back to From 8 Arbitration. I'm going to have just a short episode. I'm going to read another hour from that 6-day count book that I was reading. Tomorrow will be a little bit longer. I'm going to do one on Monday. I'll have Charlie Miller on tomorrow, and we'll talk about some different things. Been a busy weekend. Had Valley Labor Report, if y'all heard that. Renfro was on that. I was able to call in later, kind of rebut some of the dishonesty that Renfro was telling everybody. Today we had the Build a Fighting NALC, had their Vote No campaign. Started off that Zoom, had about 700 people on that one at one point, which was pretty awesome. So I was able to speak on that as well. And then I also was able to speak, went up to Evansville, Indiana, and spoke at a rally they had about the crappy contract that we just got presented with, the tentative agreement. And so been very busy. Just got home. It's about 10 o'clock. I've been on a Zoom meeting with the CLC, and so now I'm going to start this podcast, this episode. So my ass is wore out, but I've got to get this 6-day count thing done because it's going off everywhere right now, and so we're just going to get it done. Got a couple of shout-outs, and then I'll get into it. Here's one that somebody sent me. So would you please mention Laney Craig, branch 932. After two stewards and branch president went 204B, she stepped up and has lit management up in her short 2 months. She came out of the gate like her hair was on fire. We affectionately call her a pit bull. So, Laney Craig, we need many, many, many more just like you. I promise you. We need many more just like you. So there's somebody who wanted me to give you a shout out, Miss Laney Craig, branch 932, a pit bull. And we need many more pit bulls. I said, Corey, I'd like to give a shout out to Charlie Heege, president, branch 36, covering the Bronx and Manhattan, who's currently kissing the ass of Brian Renfro up at National as a trustee. John Springman must be turning in his grave to know how much of a sellout you've become. Sincerely pissed off letter carrier. And Corey, can you shout this out on your next podcast? Yes, I can. And there's your shout out. And hopefully he'll appreciate it. Here's another one. There's a new podcast out. And I'm going to start getting a list of all the podcasts so I can tell them each week. But we need many, many more, right? Many more educational podcasts. And so this one is called Tallest Nail Podcast. And he said that it's Tallest Nail Podcast. He's specifically talking about CCAs, how they can vote this crap down as far as a TA is what he just got finished talking about. So Tallest Nail Podcast. Exactly how it sounds. Tallest Nail Podcast. So everybody get on there and give that one a try. Tallest Nail Podcast. And that should be pretty awesome. I'm going to talk to Charlie Miller tomorrow. We'll have a good episode. And then I'm going to have an episode that I'm going to title How to Talk to a Narcissist and how you deal with a narcissist. And that will be very helpful, very informative on how you're going to deal with our president when you talk to him in front of people. And I'll tell you exactly how you'll do that. All right? So it's going to be how to deal with a narcissist. And I think that will be very educational as well. So let's get to this 6-day count. I'm going to read for 1 hour again. And so a couple of people said this has actually helped, which is great because there's nothing worse than reading. I hate it. I hate just reading. But we're going to keep doing it until this book is done because 6-day counts are on us. And we're going to be educated on how to beat management and hopefully make our carriers wealthy because of management's incompetence. How's that sound? I think so too. So here we go. Number 6, week after route count and inspection. PS Form 1840B. The week after the route count and inspection is the 8th week of street time used for completing the Form 1840B time card analysis, M39, Section 242.324. M39, 242.324. The average street time for the week following the week of count and inspection, including only the days the regular carrier served the route, shall then be recorded on Form 1840B and averaged into the 7 weeks random time analysis to obtain an 8-week composite week average. If the regular carrier did not serve the route on at least one of the days of the week following inspection, that week will not be used in computing the street time allowance for the route. The average weekly street times for those weeks will then be transferred to Form 1840. The street times of the regular carrier and auxiliary street assistants provided on days the regular carrier worked during each day of the week, Monday, Tuesday, etc., over the 7 weeks will later be averaged with the street times for each day of the week, Monday, Tuesday, etc., from the week after the route count and inspection. Entries from each day of the week that the regular carrier worked will be recorded on the Form 1840B in groups. For instance, all the Mondays that the regular carrier worked during the 8 weeks being used will be recorded in the same group of days and then averaged on Form 1840B. Exhibit 213D, located on page 79 of the M39 Handbook, provides the following instructions on Form 1840B. Instructions: General. Select time cards or PSDS carrier report printouts for carriers assigned to each route for a 7-week period prior to the count and inspection week per instructions in Section 242.323 Handbook M39. Do not use weeks during the months of June, July, August, or December. Do not include time of leave replacement carriers. Special instructions: for carriers serving 2-trip routes, use a separate Form 1840B for each trip. 1. Group same day of the week together, all Saturdays, Mondays, Tuesdays, etc., and show the day of the month in the day of week column. 2. Enter the scheduled begin, return, and end times, the scheduled morning and afternoon office time, the scheduled street time, and the total time above each day of the week. 3. From the time cards or PSDS carrier report printouts, enter the actual begin, leave, return, and end times for each day. Only the days the regular carrier served the route are to be recorded on Form 1840B. 4. Compute and record the morning and afternoon office time, street time, and total time used each day. 5. From Form 3996, enter the approved overtime and auxiliary assistance used each day as indicated in Item K of the form less any travel time. 6. Enter the amount of time used to provide auxiliary assistance to other routes. 7. Enter the appropriate volume count by mail type. 8. Total the morning and afternoon office time, street time, overtime, and auxiliary assistance office street for each day. 9. The 8th week to be recorded is the week following the week of count and inspection. The regular carrier must serve the route at least one day during this week, or the week is not to be recorded. No future weeks are to be used under any conditions. 10. Divide the total for each item by the number of days the assigned carrier worked on each group of Saturdays, Mondays, Tuesdays, etc. 11. From Form 1840, enter the street time, office time, AM and PM combined, total and auxiliary assistance, office street, used on the comparable day of the week during the count period. Circle in black the day of inspection total. Analysis before the count period. 1. Compare the actual time used with the scheduled time to determine whether 1. A. Carrier adhered to schedules. B. There was excessive late leaving and or returning. C. There was excessive office time used on return from delivery trip. D. Irregular pattern on certain weekdays has formed to indicate an adjustment in schedule is necessary. 2. Circle in red time entries and totals where irregular practices occurred or schedule was not maintained. After the count period. 1. Compare average time used on each day during analysis period with the same day during the count. 2. Determine whether office time and street time is more or less from comparable days. If the office time or street time during the count period is more than the analysis period, Discuss with the carrier to determine the reason. A. When the time used during the count and inspection period is substantially greater than the analysis period, the supervisor must compare the mail volume for the periods where available. 3. When the supervisor concludes that the time used during week of count and inspection does not truly represent the time required to serve the route as substantiated by the comparative analysis, appropriate corrective action must be taken. Important. In making this comparative analysis, be sure all factors are considered. Where the performance during the count period varied from that during the comparative period, include the comments of the carrier's supervisor in the space provided. 7. Agree on template or other means to verify letter size mail. The definition of letter size mail has not changed. It includes all mail that can be cased into the normal evenly spaced 6-shelf letter case without bending or folding. In the past, when 6-shelf cases were the norm, it was a simple matter to determine if a mail piece was letter size by placing it in a shelf. With 4-shelf and 5-shelf cases being used almost exclusively today, that determination has become more difficult. The parties signed the case configuration memo in 1992. It is found in Article 41 of the JCAM and reproduced below in its entirety. Memorandum of Understanding between the United States Postal Service and the National Association of Letter Carriers, AFL-CIO. For the purpose of conducting mail counts and route inspections on traditional casing equipment, letter size is defined as mail that can be cased into the letter separations of a standard 6-shelf case without folding or bending, approximately 6 inches in height. Letter size do not include newspapers, rolls, small parcels, flats, magazines, or catalogs under 2 pounds, even though these items may be cased into the letter separations of a standard case without folding or bending. When mail counts and route inspections are conducted in a unit where letter mail is cased into 4 and or 5-shelf case configurations that have been established as a result of any joint agreement, the existing definition of letter size mail will not change. The 18 and 8 standard remains applicable. Under these conditions, local management will meet with the local union prior to the dry run training to determine an efficient means to verify mail of questionable size during the week of count and inspection, e.g., a measuring strip on each case or use of the template as a reference point. The acceptance by the parties of this approach to letter size definition and case configuration is without prejudice to the parties' rights under Article 34 of the National Agreement and shall not be cited by either party in the grievance or arbitration procedure or any other form which does not pertain to the implementation of this agreement. 8. Dry run count. The purpose of the dry run is to teach carriers how to complete Form 1838C. Management is required to review the count procedures with all carriers within the 21-day period prior to the start of the route count and inspections. The dry run consists of several required elements set forth in Section 217 of the M39 Handbook, shown below. Section 917 of the M41 Handbook also covers the dry run. M39 217 Dry Run Count 217.1. A review of the count procedures will be made within 21 days prior to the start of the count and route inspection to teach the carrier how to accurately complete count forms 1838C and 1838A. During the period of count and inspection, an actual count of mail or recording of time used will not be kept on the day the dry run is made. 217.2. The sample dry run count items, forms, and completion instructions must be furnished each carrier concerned in time to allow for completion and review prior to start of the period of count and inspection. See Exhibits 217.2, page 1, 2, and 3. Overtime or auxiliary assistance should not be used for the completion of the dry run. Therefore, lighter volume days should be selected. Use only the appropriate data, EPM, non-EPM, for the unit being inspected. 217.3. An instruction period should be held following the issuance of the dry run materials, but before the completion of the dry run exercise. 217.4. The carrier must be furnished a sample list of mail count items and time used items. The carrier must enter these items on a dry run form. A manager must review each completed dry run form for accuracy, error, and omissions, and they must be discussed and explained to the carrier. When necessary, the manager may require a second completion of the form to assure that the carrier is thoroughly familiar with completing the form to be used. Since regulations require replacement carriers to count the mail and enter the data on the form, 1838C, in the same way as the regular carrier during the count week, M39 section 221.132, all carriers should receive the dry run training. M39 221.132, replacement carriers assigned to regular, full, and part-time routes must count the mail and enter the data on the prescribed forms in the same way as the full-time carrier. 9. Ensure adequate forms and supplies are on hand. Management must ensure that enough route count and inspection forms and other needed supplies are on hand. M39 section 212.2. M39 212.2. Arrangements must be made to see that enough mail count and inspection forms and other needed supplies are on hand. This requirement includes duplicate Form 1838Cs as required by Section 221.1 of the M39 Handbook. M39 221.1 Worksheets. The carrier completes in duplicate the worksheet side of Form 1838 and Forms 1838B and 1838C. Delivery managers are to refer to Handbook M41 for detailed instructions on completion of worksheets. See Exhibit 222.1, page 1 through 5. 10. No changes to clerk operations. There should be no changes to the way clerks distribute mail to letter carriers during the count week. It should continue as normal, M39 section 221.133. M39 221.133. There should be no changes in normal distribution procedures or clerical schedules during the period of mail counts. The normal cutoff time for distribution should be observed. Section 3. During week of count and inspection, general. 1. Annual leave during count week. Management may block out vacation time in order to perform route inspections provided that the dates in question are blacked out prior to vacation selections. M39 section 211.4. M39 211.4. Absences for other than emergencies will not be granted during the week of count and inspection. If it can be anticipated that there will be a count and inspection of the carrier routes at an installation, to the extent possible, planning for that inspection should normally be completed before annual leave bidding begins. This will enable management to exclude from leave charts the week selected for count and inspection. National Level Settlement M1105 establishes the principles regarding annual leave during count week that must be followed. This settlement is reproduced in its entirety on the next 2 pages. All advance commitments for granting annual leave must be honored except in serious emergency situations. When management blocks out vacation time, an equivalent number of additional slots must immediately be made available for vacation selection. Unless there is an agreement with the local union to do otherwise, the slots will be added to the number of slots required by the LMOU during the 30-day period immediately before or after the dates of the route count and inspection. 9. United States Postal Service. M1105. Dear Mr. Hutchins, on November 10th, 1992, we met in pre-arbitration discussions of the above-referenced case, which is currently pending national-level arbitration. The issue in this case is whether management violated the national agreement by excluding from the leave chart those carriers whose routes are scheduled for count and inspection during the week selected. During our discussions, we mutually agreed that 1. All advance commitments for granting annual leave must be honored except in serious emergency situations. 2. Management may block out vacation time in order to perform route inspections, provided that the dates in question are blocked out prior to vacation selection. 3. When management blocks out vacation time, an equivalent number of additional slots must immediately be made available for vacation selection. Unless the local union agrees otherwise, these slots will be added to the number of the slots required by the local memorandum during the 30-day period immediately before or after the dates of the inspection. 4. This grievance is remanded to Step 3 for the determination of remedy. And then it's signed by both parties. 2. Overtime during count week. If necessary, overtime may be used to enable the regularly assigned carrier to complete delivery during the days of the count week. M39 Section 221.137. M39 221.137. If necessary, overtime may be used to enable the regularly assigned carrier to complete delivery during the days of the count week. This provision is much more limited than it may appear to be as a result of the national settlement M1106. This settlement makes it clear that the overtime provisions of Article 8 and the associated memorandums remain in full force and effect during the week of route count inspection, except for 2 situations. On the days during the week of inspection when the carrier is accompanied by a route examiner, management may require a carrier not on the OTDL to work overtime on his or her own route in order to allow for completion of the inspection. On the other days during the week of inspection when the carrier counts mail, management may require a carrier not on the OTDL to work overtime on his or her own route for the amount of time used to count the mail. M1106 is printed in its entirety on the next 2 pages. M1106. Dear Mr. Hutchins, on November 5th, 1992, we met in pre-arbitration discussion of the above-referenced cases which are currently pending national-level arbitration. The issue in these cases is whether management violated the national agreement by requiring a carrier who was not on the overtime desired list to work overtime during the week of count and inspection. During our discussions, we mutually agreed to the following. 1. The overtime provisions of Article 8 and the associated memorandums of understanding remain in full force and the effect during the week of count and inspection, except that henceforth, A. On the day during the week of inspection, when the carrier is accompanied by a route examiner, management may require a carrier not on the overtime desired list or work assignment list to work overtime on his or her own route in order to allow for completion of the inspection. B. On the other days during the week of inspection when the carrier counts mail, management may require a carrier not on the overtime desired list or work assignment list to work overtime on his or her own route for the amount of time used to count the mail. 2. The grievance is remanded to Step 3 for determination of remedy. And then it's signed. 3. Auxiliary assistance is to be avoided during count week. Auxiliary assistance should not be granted during count week except in very limited circumstances. M39 Section 221.138. M39 221.138. Only in very unusual circumstances or emergencies when excessive late delivery would result should auxiliary assistance be granted the regularly assigned carrier during the week of the count. Some of you will have situations during the count week where auxiliary assistance has to be used in order to comply with the overtime rules as shown above. When this happens, make sure the correct time credit is given on the PS Form 1840. 4. How to record auxiliary assistance when it cannot be avoided. When a letter carrier receives auxiliary assistance on the street during the count week, the replacement's time is not recorded. Instead, the time it took the regular carrier to deliver the same portion of the route on the day of inspection is added to the street time for that day. M39 Section 241.35D. M41 241.35D. Column E, net street time used. Transfer the total net street time from item E, column H, Form 1838, recorded in hours and minutes. When auxiliary street assistance is given, add to the regular carrier street time the actual time that it took him or her to deliver that same portion of the route on the day of inspection. Do not use the replacement street time. Obtain actual time from Form 3999. A record of any unusual wait for transportation or other conditions that would cause an unusual variance in street time must be noted under Route Examiner's comment portion of the form with actual time used identified for clarification to assist in route analysis. 5. Multiple days of inspection. Management may schedule a route for inspection on no more than 3 days during the week of route count and inspection. Management will complete the Form 1838C on only one of the days scheduled for inspection. The letter carrier will count the mail and complete the Form 1838C on the other days of inspection. When local management elects to inspect on 2 or 3 days, the Form 3999 closest to the selected street time on the left side of the Form 1840 reverse will be used to transfer territory. These principles are set forth in the Memorandum of Understanding regarding multiple days of inspection contained in the National Agreement. The MOU is reproduced in its entirety on the next page. Memorandum of Understanding between the United States Postal Service and the National Association of Letter Carriers regarding multiple days of inspection. The following will apply when conducting a 6-day route count and inspection pursuant to Chapter 2 of Handbook M39. Management will, if it determines it necessary when scheduling an inspection to inspect on more than 1 day, inspect on no more than 3 days during the week of count and inspection. If management elects to inspect on 2 or 3 days during the week of count and inspection, management will be responsible for completion of the 1838C one of the days. The letter carrier will count the mail and complete the 1838C on the other days of the inspection. When management elects to inspect on 2 or 3 days, the PS Form 3999, closest to the selected street time on the PS Form 1840, will be used to transfer territory. 6. Exclude Saturday on routes with abbreviated or no Saturday delivery. Saturday is excluded from the count week on routes where abbreviated or no delivery on Saturday. The language in Section 221.11 of the M39 and Section 921.2 of the M41 is clear. Routes with abbreviated or no delivery on Saturdays are only inspected for 5 consecutive delivery days, Monday through Friday. Management may try to convince you that if Saturday is excluded, then Monday must also be excluded. This is simply not true. And I'm telling you that's going to happen. That will happen. And I think I talked about this prior, so I'm glad this said that. But we've dealt with this a lot where you have a carrier that has abbreviated delivery. That means probably has a lot of businesses on this route. That's abbreviated delivery. A lot of businesses on the route for Saturday. They're closed. That delivery won't be made. Therefore, it makes this route extremely short. What management will do, they'll say, hey, it's only fair if we take out the abbreviated delivery, we also will take out the Monday where you have the extra volume on the mail that wasn't delivered on Saturday. So we're going to take that day out as well. Can't do that. Can't do that. So make sure we grieve that if that happens under this section, M39 221.11. Schedule. The count of mail on all letter delivery routes, regular and auxiliary, must be for 6 consecutive delivery days on 1-trip routes and for 5 consecutive delivery days, exclusive of Saturday, on 2-trip routes or 1-trip routes with abbreviated or no delivery on Saturday. It is not mandatory that mail counts begin on Saturday and continue through Friday so long as they are made on consecutive delivery days. M41, 921.2, schedule. 921.21, the count of mail period on all letter delivery routes, both regular and auxiliary, shall be A, for 6 consecutive delivery days on 1-trip routes, and B, for 5 consecutive delivery days exclusive of Saturday on multiple trip routes or 1-trip routes with abbreviated or no delivery on Saturday. 921.22, it is not mandatory that mail counts begin on Monday and continue through Saturday, but they must be made on consecutive delivery days. Office. 1. Office time work allowances. The M39 Handbook contains the following explanation of minimum time allowances for each office function M39 Exhibit 222.214A4. Time allowances for carrier office work. Form 1838, line 1. 1. Routing letter size mail. That's your 18 and 8. Routing all other size mail using Notice 26, maximum time allowance for routing mail to convert pieces to minutes. That's the 18 and 8 standard. 4. Strapping mail in bundles or placing in trays, preparing relays, and placing mail into satchels for each 70 pieces regardless of character, minimum allowance 3 minutes. Strapping mail in bundles from markup at computerized forwarding unit, lines 1, 2, 3. Combined mail volume, strapping out pieces and markup pieces is used in determining time allowance at 70 pieces per minute. 8. For each 10 pieces of all classes of mail separated for forwarding or return, 1 minute. Periodicals marked up. For each 2 pieces handled for forwarding or return, 1 minute. For each Form 3579 undeliverable periodical, standard A and B or controlled circulation matter, 2 minutes. For each 4 pieces marked up, mail marked up deceased, temporary away, refused, vacant, occupant mail of obvious value or no mail receptacle, 1 minute. For each change of address, including Form 3546, recorded on Forms 1564B and 3982, 2 minutes. Insured receipts turned in, 1 minute. Registered, certified, COD, express mail, customs, postage due, keys, Form 3868, signing for returning funds or receipts, and for partial completion of Form 3849, name or address for identification, base minimum allowance is 6 minutes. Withdrawing mail where applicable. From distribution cases, trays, sacks, or hampers, base minimum allowance is 5 minutes. Sequencing and collating bypass mail, representative time in minutes will be allowed for work function. Strapping out time, when mail must be placed in order of delivery, see 922.51D. Representative time in minutes will be allowed for the work function. Break, local option. Vehicle inspection, see 922.51F. Base minimum allowance is 3 minutes. Personal needs, etc. Time allowance are printed on the form for each trip and must not be changed. Office work not covered by form. Work functions must be identified and approved as being necessary and of a continuing nature. Use comments section. Base minimum allowance is 9 minutes. Waiting for mail and all other office activities not performed on a continuing basis, which are excluded in computing net office time, use comments section. Counting mail and filling out Form 1838C worksheet. For piece items, grant the next higher allowance in minutes for fractional units. Use actual times for lines 14 through 19 and lines 21 through 23 when those functions are performed. Computing standard office time under columns E, F, and G on Form 1838. If the actual time for each lines 14, 15, 19, and 21 is less than the base minimum and the carrier performs the function, the base minimum must be entered for the line item in the appropriate column. If the actual time exceeds the base minimum, an adjustment to that time cannot be shown which is less than the base minimum. 2. Lines 14 through 23 on PS Form 1838C. The following is a brief description of each of the line items used to record time during the week of route count and inspection on PS Form 1838C. During the week of inspection, carriers will be credited with the actual time it takes to perform the task as explained below. Line 14, accountable mail, 6 minutes minimum time allowance. Time spent when you stop casing mail to get your accountable mail, signing for it, filling out the name or address on PS Form 3849, and casing the notice as a reminder in the morning, plus the time it takes to get cleared and go on to your next task in the afternoon. Now, of course, y'all know that Renfro has changed that to 2 minutes. That's what we get now, 2 minutes. So he took 6 minutes and reduced it to 2. And that's because he's saying that we do our certifieds on the street now. So he conceded that to management. They didn't file a national level grievance about management changing that working condition. a past practice of doing those in the office, and they conceded that. That's part of their concession. And now it makes us do that on the street where we die. And I think that shows his inexperience in as far as being on this floor. Because I've never known of an individual dying from a heat stroke in the office. And so anything that we can do in the office, we need to do that. We should never concede that away. But we have with these certifieds and the DPS. So now I've got a carrier that's sitting in a vehicle for 6 hours a day in 130-degree heat. And so what Renfro is saying is, you can take that time on the street now. So we don't lose that time really, because the time we took in the office, you can take as long as you want to on the street. I don't want to take as long as I want to on the street because I die on the street. That's where we die, in those vehicles. So I'm going to take this time now that I should have taken in the office in the air condition. I'm going to take it on the street in a 130-degree vehicle, filling out certifieds, where I used to do that in the office. That shows you the inexperience of Brian Renfro on this floor. Or you would not be conceding things that we do in the office to make us do them in the street. Remember when we was raising hell about these certifieds and the DPS and all these committee of presidents? He's like, well, we just don't see that's a national level grievance. The reason why is he already sold us out on the adjustment of this fixed office time down to 20 minutes. He had already sold us out on that. So he wasn't going to take it to a national level grievance. He had already conceded that they're going to make us do these certifieds on the street, and we'll take as long as it takes, even if we die. So anyway, there's your accountable mail, 6 minutes minimum time allowance. That will be changed if this clown gets his way. Line 15, withdrawal of mail, 5 minutes minimum time allowance. This includes time spent withdrawing mail from tubs or trays, cutting straps, removing plastic, etc. This line item also includes time you spend withdrawing mail from both the throwback and hot cases. The M39 states that 2 withdrawals of letter mail and 1 of papers for each trip, with a final pull just prior to leaving time, generally are sufficient. Line 16, sequencing and collating mail. Time spent collating or sequencing mail is recorded on this line. For example, time spent collating circulars to get down to 3 bundles in an FSS environment is recorded on line 16. Line 17, strapping out time. Most letter carriers will not use this line item. Line 17 is only used in very limited circumstances. The only time line 17 is used is when you have motorized curb delivery routes where the majority of the case separations contain more than 2 addresses per separation. In these instances, the letter carrier records the actual time to place the mail in the exact sequence of delivery instead of 1 minute for each 70 pieces. Line 18, break, 10 minutes minimum time allowance. In most offices, a 10-minute credit is given where the letter carrier takes a morning office break. If your office has a longer break time than 10 minutes, keep in mind that more time must be credited for line 18. Line 19, vehicle inspection, 3 minutes minimum time allowance. Time spent inspecting your vehicle every morning is recorded on this line. Time starts when you get your key to go to your vehicle and ends when you come back into the office and begin your next task. Now, if y'all are doing y'all's 29-point advanced vehicle inspection, it should take you way longer than 3 minutes. And when I teach classes on 6-day counts, I talk about minutes. We need minutes. They're going to try to take minutes away from us. If you drop a piece of mail and pick it up, they're going to charge you a minute for that, right? So they're trying to take minutes. We're trying to get minutes. And that's what I tell my carriers. We're trying to get minutes. Give me as many minutes as you can. Your advanced vehicle check is one of the best way to get us minutes. Take your time walking to your vehicle. Perform that vehicle check. Take your time and then walk back. And you should get you some good time on that, all right? Line 20, personnel time, 5 minutes minimum time allowance. This time credit covers any personal needs that you may have while in the office, such as obtaining rain gear from your locker, restrooms, needs, etc. This time is not entered on Form 1838C. 5 minutes for line 20 is automatically calculated in a fixed office time. If your office has additional wash-up time, such time is entered on line 21, not line 20. Line 21, recurring office work not covered by other line items. 9 minutes minimum time allowance. This covers a wide variety of office functions that you perform on a recurring, continuing basis. Generally speaking, recurring office time is an office task that occurs at least once per week. Many of these functions are universal and take place on almost all, if not all, routes. Some examples in the morning are getting your scanner and setting it up, trips to the throwback case, getting your parcel hamper, checking for sleepers, AMS edit book, red book work, replenishing forms, verifying hold mail, weekly safety talks, removing tags, returning empty equipment to a designated area. Some examples in the afternoon, evening are taking care of outgoing mail collected on your route, placing your attempted parcels and 3M mail in the designated location, returning your parcel hamper to the designated location, processing undeliverable mail, trips to the throwback case, returning empty equipment to a designated area, etc. Line 22, non-recurring office work. Line 22 is for non-recurring, non-continuing office functions. Because line 22 items are not regular office activities, you will not receive credit in the route evaluation for the time spent performing them. Activities that are not part of the normal routine do not become part of the route. Remember, no work performed on a recurring, continuing basis should be recorded on line 22. Generally speaking, recurring office time is an office task that occurs at least once per week, as explained above in the description of line 21. Line 23, counting mail and filling out PS Forms 1838C. Only the time spent counting the mail and filling out Form 1838C during the week of count and inspection is recorded on line 23. 3. Fixed office time adjustments. These are base minimum time allowances that must be credited for lines 14, 15, 19, and 21. Line 14, 6 minutes. Line 15, 5 minutes. Line 19, 3 minutes. And line 21, 9 minutes. If a carrier averages above the minimum time for a function during the week of inspection, the carrier will receive the average of the actual time used for that function. If the carrier averaged below the base minimum for any function, the base minimum time will be used for that function. M39 section 222.214b2. Management may attempt to adjust the actual fixed office time entries for the route being inspected. These adjustments must be supported by comments on Form 1838 or Form 1840. General comments such as excessive time, too much time, adequate or sufficient for this function used on the day of inspection, too slow a pace, are alone not sufficient for supporting an adjustment to the actual time used, M39 section 221.214b3. However, under no circumstances may the time credited for any line items, 14, 15, 19, and 21, fall below the base minimum times as referenced above. M39 221.214b. B. Lines 14 through 23. 1. The entries on lines 14 through 23, except line 20, are obtained from carriers' recorded time on Form 1838C. Note, items on lines 14 through 23 are work functions for which actual time is recorded and the recordings are in minutes. Total entries in the elapsed time column on Form 1838C for each function and transfer to columns E, F, and G as appropriate on Form 1838. 2. There shall be established for each letter route a base minimum time allowance for each line functions 14, 15, and 19, and 21 on Form 1838. Where applicable, those base minimum times shall be fixed at 6 minutes for line 14, 5 minutes for line 15, 3 minutes for line 19, and 9 minutes for line 21. If during the week of account and inspection, the carrier's average actual time for any of those line items exceeds the base minimum for the function, the carrier shall be credited with the actual average time, unless an adjustment to that time can be supported by appropriate comments on Forms 1838 or 1840 or any attachments thereto. In no event may the standard time for those functions be below the base minimum. 3. Comments such as excessive time, too much time, adequate or sufficient for this function, used on day of inspection, too slow a pace, and others similar thereto by themselves are not appropriate comments for the purpose of supporting any such adjustment. To be considered appropriate, those comments must set forth the reasons for the conclusion that less than the average actual time recorded is sufficient for the carriers to perform that function. Be guided by the following. 4. Verifying the mail count. The carrier counts and records the mail every day except on the day of the inspection. On this day, the manager counts and records the mail. When management performs the mail count, the carrier serving the route may verify the mail count. M39 Section 221.131. M39 221.13 General Rules for Making Count. 221.131. The carrier should count and record the mail every day except on the day of the inspection, when the mail must be counted and recorded by a manager. On one or more days during the count week, each route will be inspected by a manager. When management performs the mail count, the carrier servicing the route, upon request, may verify the mail count. Now make sure, shop stewards, you protect your carriers on this and educate them. Because in my office, one of the examiners, as on their day of inspection, refused to allow the carrier to verify the count. So I had to go over there and get involved. And they let them count the mail. But the examiner had no idea that the carrier could verify the count because they don't ever do these things. And so, yeah, we have the right to verify the count. Where held hand computers are used on the day of inspection, the route examiner will complete entries on Form 1838C in the usual manner, except for line item elapsed time totals and mail piece count totals by category. The calculations remain the same as previously performed manually. The carrier will continue to make time clock entries on Form 1838C for beginning, leaving, returning, and ending times. Total mail counts and times will be provided to the carrier on a computer-generated facsimile on Form 1838, Carrier's Count of Mail, Letter Carrier Routes Management Summary. This provision of the M39 Handbook was defined by a national level settlement long ago, M536. This settlement provides that carriers who request to verify management count of mail have the right to verify the entire mail count. This settlement means exactly what it says. Counting mail includes the mail counts made by machines. M536 is reproduced in its entirety on the next page. Dear Mr. Johnson, on November 28, 1984, we met to discuss the above captioned grievance at the fourth step of our contractual grievance procedure. The question in this grievance is whether a letter carrier is entitled to verify mail count. During our discussion, it was mutually agreed that the following would represent a full settlement of this case. Normally, a spot verification of the mail volume is adequate to determine that the mail count is accurate. However, the parties agree that based on the intent of Section 221.131 of the M39 Handbook, the carrier may, upon request, verify the entire mail count. Please sign and return the enclosed copy of this letter as your acknowledgement of agreement to settle this case. And so that's important when we're talking about counting the DPS as well. It says here, this settlement means exactly what it says. Counting mail includes the mail counts made by machines, which is DPS. All right, so we're going to stop it right there. Hope I didn't put all y'all to sleep, but we're going to continue this next week. All right, so next Sunday, we'll read another hour of this 6-day count, and we'll have it all done by the time they come out with a new route adjustment process. But we'll keep reading, all right? So, busy day, man. I'm tired. Going to go to bed. It's now 11 o'clock. And so, tomorrow, Charlie Miller Later on during the week, I'll probably give a kind of abbreviated episode on how to deal with a narcissist. When we're talking to a narcissist, how are you going to combat that? I think you'll find it interesting, okay? And so, a lot of shit happening, man. A lot of stuff going down. A lot of rallies, vote no rallies on this piss poor TA. And a lot of management, a lot of the union getting involved, telling y'all how great it is and that they're scared to go to arbitration. And we'll talk a little bit about that later, all right? We're going to get on those people. And so I'll talk to y'all tomorrow with Mr. Charlie Miller. I love y'all very much. I appreciate you very much. And we're going to come out on the other end of this thing a much better union, all right? I promise you. Some great days are ahead. And I wish I could tell you more. I can't. But Mr. Henry will tell you. Some great days are ahead for this union. And I could not be more excited. I couldn't be more excited. So I'll talk to y'all tomorrow. Y'all have a fantastic day tomorrow. And we'll talk to Charlie Miller. All right? Bye.